a naturopathic doctor, I believe that I do not have a cure to cancer. I'm not hiding an herb in my back office that does a better job, but I do spend time with patients speaking about nutrition, lifestyle, physical activity, and I have the luxury of spending more time with my patients.
Welcome back to An Entrepreneur's Vibes, the podcast that gives insight into the minds of visionary entrepreneurs and business leaders. Brought to you by The Right Direction, a leading professional and technical writing company based in North America. Each episode, we explore the stories and experiences of those who dared to dream, took the leap, and built their own empires. Join us in uncovering the secrets to success and lessons learned along the way. So if you're just starting out your entrepreneurial journey or you're already a seasoned business pro, you'll find inspiration, knowledge, and good vibes right here. Today's guest is a naturopathic doctor with a passion for supporting women through some of the most challenging health experiences. With a focus on breast cancer survivorship and menopause, our guest combines natural therapies with evidence-based medicine to empower her patients to live vibrant, fulfilling lives. Our guest's approach is not only addresses the physical side effects of cancer and menopause, but also helps her patients regain their confidence and sense of self. Tune in to hear her unique insights into integrative health, cancer care, and how she helps her patients thrive during and after treatment. Welcome to the show, Ashley Chauvin.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, Dr. Ashley, please, can you tell us what inspired you to pursue a career in naturopathic medicine when you first started in radiation therapy?
As a radiation therapy intern, I knew I always wanted to work with patients with cancer. And while I was an intern, I had an amazing opportunity to have a mentor that was an oncologist. And this oncologist really took me under her wing, and I got to be part of the post-cancer consults. So the follow-up aftercare. And during that time, patients had a lot of questions about nutrition, sometimes supplements, sometimes home remedies. I was very interested in this. I was always asking her questions, and she let me know that there might be a job for this. At the time that I was going to radiation therapy school, there was a place in the States, multi-center place called Cancer Treatment Centers of America. I believe it's called City of Hope now. So she suggested that this would be a really good fit for me. So from there, I looked into integrative medicine, naturopathic medicine, and decided to go to school at the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine.
And just for our viewers out there, would you tell us, in case some of the viewers don't understand, what would be the difference between naturopathic medicine and conventional medicine?
Conventional medicine, we're looking at that's the treatment you'd be getting by a medical doctor. So from a cancer care perspective, we're looking at surgery, we're looking at chemotherapy, we're looking at radiation, we're looking at pharmaceutical drugs that follow that. A naturopathic doctor has a different scope of practice, which means that in Ontario, I cannot prescribe certain medications, and I'm generally taking an integrative approach to care. So I still believe that conventional care is a great standard. As a naturopathic doctor, I believe that I do not have a cure to cancer. I'm not hiding an herb in my back office that does a better job than the standard of care. But I do spend time with patients speaking about nutrition, lifestyle, physical activity, combating some of the misinformation online about some supplements that could interact with what they're doing. And I have the luxury of spending more time with my patients. So the average visit that a patient will have with their medical doctor or their oncology team is 7 to 15 minutes. I get 1 hour with my initial visits, so we definitely get some time to talk about a lot more things.
And what was your experience like transitioning from conventional medicine to naturopathic care?
I had been an intern in a hospital setting, and naturopathic medicine in Ontario is not a hospital setting. Our residency programs in naturopathic medicine are very different. So I did decide to do a residency because I knew that I needed more mentorship than the 4 years of naturopathic school could provide for me. And during that residency, I got to see a lot. It was very different than being in a hospital because naturopathic medicine doesn't always have the same standards. And that's something that a lot of evidence-based naturopathic doctors are actually working towards. So many of my colleagues would like to see that if you're going to see a naturopathic doctor and you have a specific issue, say nausea, that all of us are kind of going to be on the same page of how we would support you. Something that's been challenging for me as a naturopathic doctor, from a going from a conventional to here, is that in conventional care, if you have a certain issue, pretty much 5 doctors are going to treat you somewhat similar. In naturopathic medicine, you can get like 5 different opinions for 5 different doctors. And that can be based on their own biases. That can be based on whether they use different modalities. So some naturopathic doctors use a lot of IV therapy. Some naturopathic doctors only use, herbs. Some naturopathic doctors are very supplement heavy. So that's probably one of the biggest changes that I've seen. Another change that I saw was I went from being an employee to being an associate. So that was very different because I was my own boss.
You are part of an all-woman team at Clarity Health, and could you tell us how that impacted your approach to patient care after you made that shift from conventional medicine and now to naturopathy?
So I wasn't always at Clarity Health. After my residency, I did stay on at that clinic and as an employee. And then I took a sabbatical for 6 months because I was quite burned out and I had the opportunity to live in New Zealand. And when I came back, I worked at a couple of other clinics as an associate. I chose Clarity Health as, my hopefully forever clinic for a couple of reasons. The owner of the clinic is a leader in our profession. She values evidence-based medicine. We do have an all-women team here, and I really love that because when it comes to my colleagues needing mat leave or time off for various issues, we really put that at the forefront. And I do really like the team that we created to support patients, not just from the naturopathic doctors at the office. We also have recently hired a medical doctor to join us, and our patient care coordinators, who are the people that patients first meet, really, really take their jobs, so seriously, and they do want to give people the best possible experience. So those are all the reasons why I chose to join Clarity.
I think that's such a powerful dynamic to be around women in the workplace. Would you tell us like some of the unique dynamics of working in a clinic with an all-woman team and how does it foster collaboration?
I've been really, I guess, lucky that the team that we created, there is a lot of mentorship opportunities. The owner of the clinic, Dr. Jordan Robertson, naturopathic doctor, she also has another business called The Confident Clinician, which is created for professionals looking to further their continuing education, and also provides, entrepreneurial mentorship. So that's been really helpful for myself as well because I am part of the teaching faculty of that. So when we're talking about being an associate, part of my day is seeing patients one-to-one, which I really love. And then another part of my day is creating content for other naturopathic doctors and mentoring and teaching and working on leadership.
And how do you balance the clinical work and the entrepreneurial aspects of your role at Clarity Health?
Oh, that's a very good question. Depending on the week that you ask me, sometimes, the balance is a little off. My patient care does come first, so that's what's important to me. I always want to be patient facing. It's my motivator. So that is the bulk of my week. And when it comes to continuing education, putting together courses for other naturopaths on various aspects of care, whether it be IV therapy, whether it be breast cancer survivorship, or speaking for other companies, that would come next. So I'm not consistently doing it. I've really had to learn over the last 3 years, I would say, of spacing those opportunities out, so that I still have, nights and weekends to enjoy and to do extra patient research as well.
So you do actually do some content creation on Instagram where I've seen you. Have you found a lot of women reach out to you via your social media platform?
People do reach out to me on social media. I'll be honest, when it comes to social media, that is my weakness. I like the content creation of the education piece, but in terms of the graphics, I need help with that. So that is one of the places where I do reach out and I do get support. So someone helps me with that. And when people do reach out to me on social media, I can't give them medical advice, but it usually creates a conversation so they can either book a discovery call or we can talk about a way that either they can work with me or they can work with somebody that I know.
And I just wanted to ask more questions about the team at Clarity. Could you tell us like some of the benefits that you've seen working with a team of women when it comes to addressing women's health issues like cancer survivorship and menopause?
The first thing is that I'll say, I wish I could do it all. I wish I could be focused in everything, but I just can't. So, for example, when someone comes to me as a breast cancer survivor, they may have another issue like gastrointestinal dysfunction. So, in that case, they may be working with me for a period of time, but if they were going through a specific issue like a colitis flare, I would recommend my teammate, Dr. Dominique Vanier, to see them because she is the person that is best to see for GI. Some of my patients want to get pregnant after cancer. That is not in my wheelhouse. So I would recommend that another one of my colleagues, like Moira or Laura, see those patients. And vice versa, I've definitely, because we see a lot of patients in our practice that have menopause, we know that 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer. That's a lot of women. So therefore, some of the patients in our office that have been working with us long term may get a diagnosis of breast cancer, or a family member will get a diagnosis of breast cancer. So they will see me as a consult to have that discussion. So it's really great because I don't feel like I need to know everything, and we can give our patients that really unique experience in, if someone is, I guess, a mentor or a leader in another area, they can see that person.
I really feel like it's such a collaborative workplace. And would you say that the all women team influences the clinic's culture and the overall patient experience?
I think so. I mean, if we do still see male patients, and I think if we had a male practitioner in here, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. But this is my first clinic that I've been at that is an all women team, and it's the clinic that I love the most. Obviously, I'm here, so there might be something to that.
And would you have any advice for someone or what advice would you give to other healthcare professionals who are looking to join an established practice or clinic as an associate?
That's a really good question. When it comes to associateship, there's a few things to consider. So, as an associate, I'm not the owner of the clinic. So, you want to really know that the owner of the clinic plans to keep the clinic and what their vision of the clinic is for, right? Like, is this something that they are using to just generate kind of side income for their passion? As an associate, what are your responsibilities and what are their responsibilities? So, and that includes marketing responsibilities. That also includes how much authority you have as an associate over the patient care coordinator team or the front desk staff. when the clinic owner, who usually can't be there 24/7, when they're gone, whether that just be out of the office for the week, or are they present every day? If they're not present every day, who's overseeing like the operations, the day to day? I always ask as an associate about why you're looking for me. And so at Clarity Health, the reason why I joined the clinic was because there was a need for someone with my specific set of skills versus some associateships. When you step into them, it's very like rent based, and it's kind of just like a way to build extra income. So I really wanted to know that this clinic was going to be would nourish me more than just beyond a paycheck. You also want to ask about mentorship. Are you going to be mentoring others? Are others going to be mentoring you? What would that look like? Those are kind of the main questions that I asked. I actually asked about the pay structure last, but one thing I will say at this particular clinic, the clinic owner is very open and transparent, open to negotiation, which I really liked. At other clinics, sometimes you're not encouraged to talk about your split or your rent with your other colleagues. And I would say that's kind of a yellow flag, if not a red flag. I think it's important that we talk about our numbers and that we talk about our finances if we want to excel as entrepreneurs.
I think that advice is something that a lot of people would understand because not just for the health industry, for any job really that you're trying to apply for, you really have to kind of trust the company that you want to be a part of. And a part of that is seeing if they're even transparent with the pay. And so it's nice to know that you're a part of like a workplace that does value transparency within their workers. And with that, I wanted to ask, like, what would you say are some of the challenges and rewards of working within an established clinic like Clarity Health?
I think just the challenges, and this is more like my personality, is that one of the non-entrepreneurial values I have is sometimes getting nervous about change. So when I'm in like a state of flux, or if something's going to be changing, I always think like, is it going to go okay? As an associate, that's a really important skill to have, is being open to some changes and challenges of the seasons of the clinic, whether that's bringing on new members or whether that's a staff changeover. So, depending on your personality, that can be something to consider. But I think I'm getting a lot better at it, and I've been really embracing a lot of the changes that we've had. I think it's also based on trust, because at our clinic, we do have a really open dialogue about when we are concerned about changes, or if a change is happening, how long we're going to give it before we can really say, is this working or is this not working? So that also helps with change, right? Like knowing that it's happening, and also knowing that if it's not working, how can we remedy it? Another challenge as an associate, at least for me, is I was never into marketing myself or having a personal brand. And if I can give one piece of advice to anybody becoming an associate as a naturopathic doctor, is that regardless of what anybody tells you, that's probably something that you want to start from the very beginning. Because if you do ever leave an office, no one's going to know about you, or no one's going to find you. And when it comes to having a mentor, I've been very lucky that the mentors that I have given me opportunities to do speaking opportunities, to be in rooms where other people can see the skills that I bring. But if you are in a mentorship opportunity where maybe that mentor wants to keep you hidden, it might not really be a mentorship. So that's something else as an associate. You have to consider, like, what is your role at the office, and knowing that, you're not the owner of the clinic.
Here at the podcast, it's funny that you mentioned having a personal brand because we always talk about the importance of it, of branding, especially now in our digital age where, people often see you at social media platforms or, rarely will you ever meet someone new face to face where they can automatically know who you are. And so I wanted to ask you, like, now I know you said that's kind of a challenge for you, but would you say now that you've created a personal brand? And if yes, what would you say that is?
Oh, no, I think I'm still working on it, to be honest. I think that's something that I continuously work on. I do still do quite a bit of in-person functions. I really try to meet people face to face. And yeah, from a personal branding perspective, I think that's always just a work in progress. So just trying my best.
Mhm. And how does being an associate at Clarity Health align with your long-term professional goals?
That's a great question. So I never want to own my own clinic. When I interviewed with Jordan, I think that was the first thing that I said. Like, I want to be clear, I never want to own my own clinic. So I really need to love the office that I'm at. And it was important to me. I want to be a naturopathic doctor for a very long time, patient facing. So I really, really wanted the clinic to have some longevity. So our goals were aligned with that. I also wanted to have some teaching opportunities, and that is something that I'm able to do as being part of Clarity Health. I wanted the clinic to be patient-centered, and it very much is patient-centered. I also like that we have pretty great, we're very hard workers. We all seem to have like the same work ethic. However, managing burnout and managing work-life balance is a value that we all share at the office. So that's something that was really important to me as well.
And can you share some of the things that you do personally to retain that work-life balance?
Yeah, so looking at things that I love to do outside of the office is really important to me. I really am lucky that I have, a great family and great friends. So I have a good social life outside of the office as well. It's interesting because my husband is an entrepreneur. He has his own business. So we have definitely had to work on um, times where it's like business and times where it's not business, but he's not in the healthcare profession. So that's also very helpful. I really like exercise. I think that having a good physical activity or like some kind of movement is really important, at least for my mental health and managing burnout. And it's also something that challenges me. I'm not an athlete. I didn't start going to the gym until I was 40. So finding things outside of your profession that you enjoy and that challenge you and kind of give you something to work on definitely helps with managing burnout.
And I just wanted to ask you, how has working at Clarity Health influenced your ability to create personalized treatment plans for your patients?
Before I started working at Clarity Health, I was not, I was still a member of Confident Clinician, but I wasn't on staff. Confident Clinician was still in its baby stages, we'll say. So since I have been at Clarity Health, not only am I using a lot of the extra research, but I would say since being at Clarity Health, my research skills for patients have definitely been enhanced, as well as my critical appraisal skills when it comes to looking at healthcare. I would also say my interprofessional skills are much better. So I have the opportunity to collaborate with a medical doctor here. I also find that I'm referring back and forth to other allied health professionals, such as physiotherapists. Pelvic floor physiotherapists are one of my favorite referrals, looking at like dietitians, things like that. So I would say that since being at Clarity Health, that's something that's changed quite a bit. And that's been able to enhance the patient experience by widening my scope of practice.
Earlier, Ashley, you were telling me that you weren't an athlete and that you only really started working out at the age of 40. I recently saw a clip online that said for some people, whether they have vices or not, the person who exercises most would live a longer, more fulfilling life, even if they had vices, compared to someone who probably never smoked cigarettes, didn't ever do or drink alcohol. They would probably be susceptible to more sickness down the line than someone who has vices and still exercises. So I wanted to ask, since you are in naturopathic medicine, what is the importance of like keeping your body active and does it really affect your long-term health?
Absolutely. The best thing that you can do for longevity is to build muscle mass. And we know that when you become pretty much over 30, over 35, the rate at which you're able to maintain muscle drops, and the rate at which you gain body fat and visceral fat increases. It's why our body composition changes. We know that individuals who have more muscle mass do tend to have greater longevity, less risk of illness. So, our long term illness, like cardiovascular problems, metabolic problems, we know that they tend to have less incidences of osteoporosis or like less risk of osteoporosis. And when an individual has larger amounts of muscle mass or like adequate muscle mass, I will say, and they do get diagnosed with a chronic disease, they do tend to fare better than their peers who don't.
And now I wanted to ask you some naturopathic medicine questions and its role in healthcare. Could you tell us, like for you personally, what was it that drew you into naturopathic medicine?
I'm going to blame my parents on that. I think I really just didn't know anything else. So it's funny that we were just talking about health and longevity. So my father, his career was a teacher. I definitely don't come from an entrepreneurial background, but his thing that he really liked to do was powerlifting. So he was competitive. He competed before I was born, and then a little bit after I was. So early, very early 80s, but he really maintained continuing to prioritize weight training and like playing sports. So I always grew up in a home where that was important. My mom, same thing. So she really liked to run. She taught aerobics. So physical activity in our house was kind of like a non-negotiable. It was something we did. And my parents also really prioritized nutrition. So we weren't restrictive in our house. We still had pizza and pop on Friday nights. We still, would go to birthday parties and indulge. But generally during the week, we were having, like our chicken or brown rice or broccoli, especially if my dad was draining. So because of that, I kind of just thought that was the norm. I took a vitamins when I was a kid. So when I guess this stuff kind of came more mainstream because I didn't have social media and other people doing it growing up. And when patients started approaching me and asking about things that kind of I've had the privilege of just doing my whole life, like, oh yeah, of course people go to the gym. That's just what they do, right? Like, of course you make time to go running. I just didn't realize that not everybody was doing that. So it was a real trigger for me to want to teach other people to consider that that was a possibility.
And can you explain some of the core principles of naturopathy and how do they guide your practice?
So we do have certain principles, like first, do no harm would be one of them. And I think of that in two ways. One would be making sure that we're respectful of conventional therapy. If there is a conventional therapy that can support a patient, letting the patient know. We can't pretend that, sometimes our therapies are equal to that. So we're looking at this preventative or is this not? I also think part of doing no harm is combating the misinformation online. As much as I am a big fan of naturopathic medicine and supplements are great and there are herbs that are great, really putting into perspective what things can do, what they can't do, and if there's interactions and if there's not. One of the things that comes up in naturopathic medicine a lot is like one of our principles is looking at the root cause. I think that can be really hard, especially in certain chronic diseases like cancer. There's definitely risk factors that people have, but we often can't say that there was one moment in time that caused that particular issue. But what we can do is look at preventative things to support them. When we're also talking about root cause medicine, it's looking at when someone comes in with a particular issue. looking at other factors that may play a role in how they're feeling. So I'll use fatigue for an example, because a lot of people are tired. We want to look, is this sleep? Is this nutrient deficiencies? Is this fueling appropriately? Is this burnout? Is this an autoimmune issue? And looking at what are the odds of this happening, and testing appropriately for that.
And can I ask like how you integrate naturopathic treatments with conventional cancer care in a safe and effective way?
Yeah, so when someone comes to me, they're either in active treatment, which means they have a diagnosis of cancer and they're getting treatment from their conventional team, or they're coming to me with no evidence of disease and their goal is saying, hey, I'm not on any of those medications anymore, and my goal is to try to recover and feel better. So that's going to look very different depending on which stage of their cancer experience they're in. For the people who are on active treatment, my goal is always having a conversation with the patient about why I'm supporting them or how they're supporting them. So I'm not treating their cancer. I might be supporting them because the recommendations from the dietitian that they've gotten at the hospital, maybe they don't have a strategy to follow. So they're looking more for that nutrition advice. We're going to spend more time doing it. Maybe they're coming to me because they have heard that certain supplements can support them, but their oncology team is saying no, so they kind of want a third party. So we're looking at all of those things. And when it comes to fatigue, when it comes to nausea, treatment related neuropathy, brain fog, that's also going to be based on if the interventions that I'm doing are going to support them in such a way that it's not going to make their treatment less effective. At the end of the day, if someone is on treatment, we'll say for stage 2 breast cancer, which is a very high rate of cure, they are there for curative intent. So I really need to make sure that none of what I am doing is going to possibly decrease the efficacy of their treatment.
I wanted to ask, like, what are some of the common misconceptions about naturopathy that you encounter from patients or other healthcare providers, and how do you correct that?
One of the first things that I see when patients come into me is thinking that I'm going to put them on a very, very restrictive diet. So no gluten, no dairy, no coffee, no sugar. I would be a hypocrite if I did that. So the first thing is really saying, like, when it comes to nutrition, looking at the bigger principles and if they're going to align with the patient's goal, right? So we might be starting with, are you getting enough protein? How many vegetables are you eating? I don't care how much coffee you drink, but are you drinking water? So we talk about that misinformation. I think the other misinformation that comes out, it's really dependent on the person. But what I will say is humans in general have something called an affirmation bias, which is the first piece of information that you hear about a particular subject that you believe, it is very, very hard for someone to be convinced otherwise. So sometimes when it comes to that, the misinformation that I'm hearing, we're showing them research or we're talking about where that misinformation came from. One of the most recent misinformations that I talk about a lot with my patients has to do with nutrition, about soy and breast cancer. So when I was first graduating, we kind of told patients, don't have soy, soy is bad. Now, almost more than 15 years later, we see that's not the case. There is a lot of research, human research, that shows that soy is very beneficial. So that would be an example of misinformation that I'm talking about.
And how do you determine which naturopathic therapies, such as nutrition, herbs, or supplements, are best suited for individual patients?
So it first depends on the patient. So I always ask somebody, what are your yeses and what are your nos? So while people are on active treatment, if they're getting chemotherapy, for example, they might say, I don't want to take any supplements, or I might tell them, if you're nauseous right now, can we even take a lot of supplements? So we may choose to focus more on nutrition. or more on physical activity. Other patients will come to me and say, right now I'm feeling so unwell. I can't even think of, changing anything with my nutrition. I can change one thing, but I am willing to take a couple of supplements. So depending on their nutrient deficiencies, what is indicated, if there's no contraindication, then we're going to start there. So it is very patient centered, and I have to make sure that the person who is coming to see me wants to do the thing, right?
Mhm.
I'm not taking a paternalistic approach. And then the second thing is that, is it indicated? So I'm not just going to give somebody, 20 supplements and hope for the best. It has to be very targeted. It has to be evidence-based. And then, is it safe? Is there any contraindications with any other medications that they have?
In your experience, what would you say are the greatest benefits of naturopathic medicine, especially for women who are experiencing menopause or undergoing cancer treatment?
I would say the time and the strategy that we're able to give patients. So, as I mentioned earlier, some patients only will have very short appointments with their team. And that can be very frustrating because they might have 6 questions and only be able to answer one or two. So, that's something that we can provide. The other thing that we can provide is a holistic view of their case. So there are times, for example, maybe an active chemotherapy where patients aren't going to be worried about their cholesterol or their bone health. But for example, in survivorship, those are very big principles, right? That we need to talk about, that we need to care about long-term survivorship risks. So when patients come to me, I'm talking about all of that. Whereas maybe when they're having their oncology follow-up, the oncology team is just looking for, is there a recurrence? If they're seeing a cardiologist, their cardiologist is just talking to them about their heart health, whereas I'm looking at it as all one big picture.
I wanted to ask, how do you address skepticism from patients who are new to naturopathy or are unfamiliar with those methods?
Yeah, I'm quite fortunate that at our office, even though maybe my personal brand isn't super strong right now, I feel like our clinic's branding, marketing, and also the people that they first have points of contact with are pretty strong. So most of our patients that are coming in are aligned. We're not dragging people in, I would say, because it is privatized care and they're paying out of pocket. We don't really see a lot of people being like, I think this is complete garbage, but I'm going to give you money. So we don't often see that, but we do particularly have like handouts and messaging that we will give new patients about what we do, what we don't do, expectations. And then with patients, I think it's important. Sometimes skepticism comes from them having an experience where they have heard that they'll go to see a practitioner that is a naturopathic doctor and be offered thousands of dollars worth of testing or 20 supplements. So I really like to have discovery calls with potential patients that may be skeptical, and I will talk to them about, again, what I do and what I don't do, such as I'm not going to take away the fact that they enjoy a coffee in the morning, or they don't have to be gluten-free unless they're celiac. And that can sometimes be very helpful for those patients.
And what would you say is the role of the prevention play in naturopathic medicine? And how do you empower patients to take proactive steps in their health?
The first thing that I look at when we're taking a proactive care is actually seeing your baseline. I call it like kind of our credit card statement. So often, just like, we don't know what our financial situation is until we open up our bills and open up our credit card. We have to do that with our health as well. So we have to actually see, like, what does our blood work show? What is our baseline? Where are we at? When it comes to nutrition, there's certain things that we want to make sure that we're getting enough of. So, for example, protein, fiber, calcium, those are all examples of, are we getting enough? What's our baseline? Because there's certain places where you can have somebody who's doing an amazing job getting more than enough fiber. I'm not going to spend my time talking about that with patients if they're already very strong in that area. I think it's important that patients are able to set goals, and we talk about setting goals in their health. And then I'm there to also help with their expectations in terms of, okay, that's a great goal. We can't achieve that in a month, or we can't achieve that in one visit. This is what it's going to look like. This is what it's looked like for other people. This is what it's looked like for people in your similar position. So people can feel very confident about their next steps. When it comes to physical activity, that's going to be a non-negotiable, but again, we have to see where that starts. And when it comes to prevention in general, it's making sure that we're not missing our screenings. I have to take every opportunity I can to tell anybody over 40 that is like assigned female at birth to get a mammogram, and make sure people aren't missing their PAPs and their colon screening, and really talking about muscle mass, alcohol, those types of things.
Not only do you support your patients with their treatments, but you also support patients with survivorship. How do you define survivorship in the context of cancer care, and why is it important to address?
So, survivorship is where I spend the bulk of my practice. A cancer survivor is actually defined as anyone who's ever had a diagnosis of cancer. So, whether that be they had cancer 15 years ago and there's no evidence of disease, whether that is somebody who just got diagnosed with cancer yesterday and hasn't even had surgery yet. So, if you've been diagnosed with cancer, you are a cancer survivor. In the context of my practice, or where a lot of people are identifying, is they have completed conventional care, whatever that has looked like, and they are on, we'll call it like a maintenance mode. So they'll go visit their oncology team every 3, every 6, or every year for a check-in.
Could you share some resources or support systems that you recommend for cancer survivors to help them during their recovery?
Yeah, so I have, a list of people depending on what they need. So I do recommend a pelvic floor therapist. I think that's really beneficial to have. I do also recommend someone who can support them with their physical activity and movement. And usually we're starting with a physiotherapist. A lot of my patients may have some mobility challenges or some concerns because of a particular condition, their surgery. So we're looking at that. And some physiotherapists can also help assess and support lymphedema, which for patients that have a history of breast cancer is a possible concern. And then from like a mental emotional perspective, there are some support groups that I really like for my patients. For everybody, Wellspring is one of my favorite places to recommend. They have a lot of free resources. And for my patients that are diagnosed with cancer at a younger age, I do recommend the Bloom Club. And they have meetups all through, like, I think Southwestern Ontario. And a lot of my patients really benefit from that.
How do you help patients manage treatment-related side effects such as fatigue or hormonal changes during their survivorship journey?
Yeah, so during survivorship, we first have to decide, what are our options, both conventional and naturopathic, right? So I do spend quite a significant amount of time talking to patients about options that are outside of my scope of practice. I do work, as I mentioned, with a medical doctor at our office. So for some patients, just because I'm a naturopathic doctor, if there is a better option to manage hot flashes, for example, we are going to be making that recommendation. Whether or not they feel aligned with that, then that's up to them. When it comes to managing like specific, like hot flashes, that is very individualized. So there's definitely everything from lifestyle, such as certain hypnotherapy techniques. When it comes to nutrition, there's some research that shows that supporting people with a Mediterranean diet can support hot flashes. Although when hot flashes become moderate to severe, we generally need to use like some of our heavy hitters, and that can mean medication. For patients who don't have the option of using hormonal therapy, there are non-hormonal options that we can use. When it comes to certain herbs or supplements, it's never a one size fits all, unfortunately, because that's just very hard. It's individual.
Well, thank you so much for like your recommendations for resources and support systems. I'm sure someone out there will find those very, very helpful. I just wanted to ask you one last question before I let you go. What advice would you give to students or professionals looking to enter the field of naturopathic medicine?
So if someone wants to become a naturopathic doctor, I would probably have them talk to a naturopathic doctor, talk to more than one, talk to somebody who's like fresh out of school, 5 years out, and like 15 plus years out to really see how the landscape has changed. I would say one of the biggest pieces of advice I have is to know that your learning is actually going to start when you leave school. So you want to be really, really, really prepared to invest that your protocols, how you're going to support people are probably going to come after school. And that's really hard because a naturopathic school is 4 years. It's a very, very big investment. So coming out, you want to believe you have all the tools that you need, but you don't. So you want to look for a mentor and you really want to be prepared for, yeah, knowing that you're going to have to learn a lot more. My last piece of advice would be to get your critical appraisal or your research skills as high as possible. Just looking at research is not enough. You want to be able to evaluate whether that research is something you can use, something that applies to your patient, or something that you don't need to read at all.
And is there anything else you'd like to share with our viewers? Some more advice, maybe some more resources for them, anything at all that you'd like to share?
If you're interested in naturopathic medicine, whether it be menopause focused or, integrative cancer care focused, I do hang out on Instagram. So feel free to connect with me. I'm at Ashley Chauvin _ND or connect with me at Clarity Health in Burlington, Ontario. And I'd be happy to chat with you.
Well, we'll share all your links down below in the description so everyone can find you. Thank you so much, Ashley, for taking the time to grace our podcast and share your wisdom with our listeners. And of course, thank you to everyone who has listened to us today. This has been your host, Patricia. And remember, for all your professional and business and technical writing needs, there's only one way to go, and that's with the right direction. See you guys soon. Goodbye.